Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. Quick video, I think, or at least I think it's going to be quick. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about, you know, more of a discussion on comic book collecting and evolution in comic book collecting. These are just some things that I think might be helpful to some collectors out there or new collectors out there. Just from my point of view, I think they'll be helpful. I can't say with certainty they'll be helpful. But what I want to talk a little bit about is, there are many reasons why collectors stay in this hobby. I don't want to sit here and tell you one definitive reason or a couple definitive reasons. There are many reasons why. But for me, and for those that feel like me, these are some of the reasons why I stay in the hobby. Initially, it's for the genuine love of the hobby. I think that goes without saying with any hobby. If you have a genuine love for it, like if you like video games, collecting video games, sports cards, sneakers, comic books, whatever it is, you have a genuine love for that type of hobby, whether it's playing, like with video game, or collecting when it comes to cards and all that. And then there are some that, branch off into different ways of collecting. For me, over the years, as I'm coming towards my, I kind of like said this before, I kind of passed my 10-year anniversary on YouTube and all the videos that I've made, comic book hauls and all these discussion videos and this and the other thing. When I look back on those years of coming back into the hobby and being on YouTube and being in front of all of you, I have to say that one of the words that I would use is how I evolved with the hobby. When I first got into it, I strictly wanted this. I would certainly not collect that. A very rigid way of looking at things, which can be good. You need some level of rigidity when it comes to staying on focus and making sure that, you reach certain goals. I think that's a good thing. But as time moved on, I've learned to be a little more open with certain things. And it's actually helped me. The point is, it's helped me enjoy the hobby even more. Recently, and I'll show some books, I'll show you what I mean and how I collect and all that stuff for those that don't know, first time watchers of this channel and haven't really done any looking at other my previous videos. There'll be a little bit of a recap and some of the things I've said in the past in this video for those of you that haven't been watching. But yeah, I think that this evolution that a lot of us go through helps keep the hobby fresh, right? As of late, I've been getting rid of a lot of books that, I really don't feel I want anymore in my collection. I do that for a couple of reasons. One, to make room, because after a while, and I know a number of YouTubers have said this over the years, you're tired of having all this extra stuff. So I'm trying to make room. But two, also make room for bigger books that I think are better to have in my collection. I know there are several YouTubers, including Alex the Comic Book Hoarder and even ETA Nick from a few years ago, that were trying to get down to a certain percentage of books in their collection. I think that's great. Some of them are well on their way to getting to that percentage. Some have reached that percentage, and I think that that's a wonderful goal. Let's talk about rigid goals, right? I'm trying to stay focused on that. That's where it's a really good thing. But I think that even with videos like that and ideas like that, it shows the evolution of comic book collecting, right? It's a new stage of collecting that you find more enjoyable, to have things that you really, really want, that you think are really good in the long run, and not just having all this extra stuff. I'm slowly moving there. More slowly than I want to. But I have, as of late, been, getting rid of a bunch of other books, selling off a couple of things. But aside from that, there are still some books that I want to get in my collection. But one of the biggest things when it comes to evolution is the upgrade for me. I'll talk about two things: the upgrade, and then bringing in things that I never thought I would bring in. Like I said, thinking the way I was thinking 10 years ago, oh, I would never get this, I would never get that, how that has changed. I put that under the umbrella of evolution. But for those that have been, for those of you that are low-grade collectors, and I think a lot of us start out as low-grade collectors for many reasons. I think the biggest reason is financial, to be honest. There are some people that just don't care. I don't say don't care in a negative way. I say don't care like, I'm just happy to have the book. Low grade is better than no grade. I think that's the term that has been said on this channel and it's been said by many others when it comes to that. But I do think that for the most part it is financial, because even though books have gone down over the last couple of years, and they had to because the prices in 2021, early 22 were absurd. I mean, I think a lot of people may have thought that that was going to stay. It was going to stay that way, but I've heard many people say in other videos that the market needed a correction and all that stuff. I guess so. But I think the prices were absurd. But still, some things are pretty pricey. So that's why I think low-grade collecting is something that a lot of people did. I started out getting low-grade books. But as I started to narrow my focus and evolve from just trying to collect everything, I've learned to put my resources in a specific spot. And I was able to take some of those low-grade books, the ones that I really cared about, and upgrade them. And for those that have been watching this channel over, really over the last 10 years, you've seen that in many different cases. But it's really over the last 3 years when I would say that I've really taken the plunge into upgrading instead of adding new books to the collection. Instead of getting a ton of new books that I've never owned, although I still get plenty of new books that I've never owned, but instead of that being the main focus, as it was for me so many years, and maybe as it was for many of you, I'm really focusing on taking a certain book I have and upgrading it to something that's very, very nice. And sometimes that upgrade, I upgraded a couple of times, depending on the value of the book, depending on the availability of the book, and so forth. But again, getting back to that term evolution, that's something that kind of thinking I didn't have when I first came back to the collection. Sure, there were some books I wanted to get better copies of, and then that was it. But mainly it was just trying to bring in as many new books as possible. For those that have watched or will watch some of my earlier comic book haul videos, for the first couple of years of me being on YouTube, all I did was comic book hauls. And I would say 90% of them were all new books added to the collection, with 10% maybe being an upgrade or two, right? But then after that, I started doing discussion videos. Even my videos have kind of evolved, trying to move away from hauls and all that stuff. Although I still do I like doing hauls, but I prefer videos like this where it's more of a discussion, where people can think and maybe it could help them out in some form or another, or leave comments to add to the commentary that I'm making here. But yeah, like I was saying, it's really moved towards shifting from low grade to better grades. And I'll show you a couple books, what I mean. You've seen these on my channel, but, just to show you, here we have Giant Size X-Men 8.5. Now, originally, I had probably maybe a 3.5 copy raw that I bought back in 1994. And when I came back to the hobby 10 years ago, I upgraded to a 6.5, and then that was it. I thought that was it. I got my 6.5, and I never thought about upgrading again. Again, going back with that original model that I was following. I got the 6.5, don't need anything else. That's good enough. But then when I started to change my mindset, said, maybe I could turn this 6.5 into something else. And I've said in previous videos, it's easier to go from a 6.5 to maybe a 7.5. You sell off the 6.5 and you raise a little bit of funds to pay the difference, and you got yourself a much nicer grade. I mean, I wound up going to an 8.5. I didn't plan that. Originally, I planned to go to a 7.5, but an 8.5 opportunity presented itself and I took it. But, that's the way I started thinking with my collecting. And that was the result, and that's how the giant size X-Men 8.5 came into be. And honestly, 8.5 is really, really nice, but I'm thinking down the line, maybe I'll go to a 9.2. You never know. You never know. But the point is just try to be more open-minded. But everybody starts somewhere, too. Sometimes you start at low grade. That doesn't mean that you can never get a higher grade if that's what you would kind of want down the line. Like, yeah, I got a 3.5 or a 4.0, which is fine. But, I really would like to have a 7.0 or a 7.5 or a 6.5. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Sometimes you just gotta maybe change some of your priorities when it comes to your collecting, right? Not when it comes to your priorities in life, like paying bills and taking care of your kids and all that stuff. Priorities when it comes to collecting, man, maybe I don't need all these first appearances. Maybe I don't need to keep hunting all these Bronze Age things or whatever it is you're collecting. Maybe I'll just take a shift away from that for now and try to get something even nicer that I would really, really like. Here's another one that I made. I'll show a couple more when it comes to upgrades, and I'll finish the video with buying books that I thought I would never buy. This was another recent upgrade this year, a couple months ago. 5.0 Daredevil #1. Again, about 8 years ago, I purchased, I think, a 2.5 Daredevil #1. And I was just happy to have Daredevil #1. That was my second big first appearance Silver Age book in my collection under the X-Men one. I didn't have really anything else. I didn't have the Fantastic Four. I didn't have the Hulk. I didn't have Spider-Man or Iron Man or Thor or Avengers or Nick Fury or any of the others. The only big major Marvel characters that I had their first appearance of were the X-Men. And then it was Daredevil. So I was just happy. The point is I was just happy to have it. And again, throughout the years, I was like, I don't know. I don't think I'll ever upgrade it. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago I started saying, that's probably going to be a book on the list of upgrades. And then I eventually got to it. I planned to do it last year. It just didn't work out because I got this next upgrade. But then I knew I was going to get it earlier this year. And I did. So just never say never, I guess. Never say never. And the last big upgrade I'm going to show before I do the second part of this video is this one right here. X-Men #1. And, I got myself a 5.0 copy. I've had a lot of copies of X-Men #1 ever since I started collecting back 31 years ago. I had a coverless copy for about 20 years, and then 10 years ago I upgraded to a 3.0 copy. That 3.0 copy I took to New York Comic Con in 2016 to get Stan Lee's autograph, but I wound up selling it to get an even bigger book. But then I replaced it with another 3.0, which I had all the way until last year, and then I got this one, So, again, that's a pretty big book. It's bigger than the giant size, and it's bigger than Daredevil #1, and it ranks up there with some of the big Marvel silvers. It's not as big as Spider-Man or the Hulk, right? But it could definitely hold its own, if not beat Iron Man and Thor, and especially the Avengers, right? The Avengers as a team in Avengers #1. So, again, never say never. So, always keep an open mind about, even if you have low grade and you one day want a higher grade, it can be done. It's just a little bit of refocusing, a little bit of evolution when it comes to your thinking towards this hobby. I know I said this was going to be a short video. It's obviously 13 minutes. I'm trying not to make it too that much longer. But then we have a couple of books here. Now, I started collecting ECs, as you know, and I'm not going to really show any ECs because the ECs I want to show don't really match the point I'm making in this video. Although I will be showing some more ECs in an upcoming video on pre-codes, some of my favorite pre-codes. But here, with using EC as an example, I said to myself, I really like the horror books. I've collected superheroes for so long. Back 10 years ago, I never thought I would even start collecting the ECs, even though I love them. It was just another rabbit hole I didn't want to go down for resource purposes. Like, I want to get all these first appearances. I want to get these big books. I want to get these big Batman books. which was my focus, which I was glad it was my focus because it turned out some pretty good stuff in my collection that's still important to me today. But I just couldn't do it all. It's just, resources run thin. But then when all that stopped and I started getting rid of some of the things I didn't want, I changed my focus like I've been talking about throughout this whole video so far. I started getting the ECs, and I thought that'd be it. I'm strictly an EC guy. I'll be try to finish all my Tales from the Crypts, my Vault of Horrors, my Haunted Fears, and that's going to be, and try to get some of the shocks and the crimes, and that's about it. I won't go any further than that. Well, as I've ventured into Instagram and met some people, I started seeing that Marvel, before they became Marvel, they were known as Atlas, and before Atlas they were known as Timely. But mainly the Atlas period of Marvel's life, they churned out some excellent pre-code horror titles that I had no idea even existed. But even when I found out about them, I said to myself, nope, can't do that. I can't start going into Atlas and other companies too, like Charlton and Avon, for pre-codes. I'm strictly an EC guy, and I'll work on that. Well, that didn't last too long. So with that thinking that I've been talking about this whole video, I started slowly venturing into Atlas. And it started with this book here. Not this particular copy. This is actually the third copy I've had of this book over the last 3 years. Mystic 28. I said to myself, okay, I'm not going to start collecting Atlas, but I want that book. I mean, it's a great cover, right? The Morgue cover, all that, by Joe Maneely, who was a great artist who tragically died before Atlas became Marvel. Probably would have been one of the Marvel artists of the early 60s if he had not died. But that's a story for another video, or another debate. But I'll just get that one. Well, when I got that one, I started seeing some others, and then I started getting into Atlas. Now, don't get me wrong, there's many books in Atlas that I would like to, and others, not just Atlas, that I'd like to get that I can't get at the moment. But getting into that, evolving into accepting other books into my collection, other ideas, has made this fun for me. I enjoy upgrading, like I was just talking about with the first part of this video. And now just like looking for some of the Atlas books that I want. And even upgrading some of those when I can. If like the Mystic is a 4.0. Well, one day I'd like to get maybe a 5 or a 5.5 of that. But 4.0 is pretty good right now. So taking some of the ideas I said earlier in this video and applying it to this still work. So it's a win-win, when it comes to this hobby. And I think a lot of us are at that point in this hobby, or at least some of us. That type of thinking, getting into Atlas and not just solely focusing on first appearances, not solely focusing on just getting EC books, has led me to some really good books, getting new books in my collection that have really enhanced the hobby for me. Here's another one, Journey into Unknown Worlds, another Atlas book, great book. And probably, show you another one. Then I'll show you my favorite, or one of my favorites rather. This one right here, Menace. Again, this is a book that probably needs to be upgraded, but it's a great book to have. It's learning a little bit more about Marvel's history with pre-code horror, something that I never even considered, is just astounding. And quite possibly one of my favorite pre-code Atlas books right here. Mystery Tales. To me, this is the definitive zombie cover. And I think it competes with any EC title, any EC cover that's out there. But again, overall, it's helped me really enjoy this hobby and revitalized it for me. Because there was a point a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit more than a couple of years ago, where I was thinking about stopping. I think I even made a video, is collecting even fun anymore? Because of the prices. It started saying, well, is it even worth it? But when I changed, I said, well, maybe we should focus on selling some books that you really don't want and upgrading the books that you really like. And it just changed everything for me. I'm more appreciative now of being in this hobby than I ever was. And I think that's saying a lot, since I've been in this hobby more or less than 31 years. It's a long time. So that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I will probably put together another video just showing off some of those pre-code books I was mentioning. You'll see the ones I showed again too, among many others. I'll see if I could do some ECs and Atlas and others for that type of video. But in any event, just tell me where maybe you're at when it comes to your collecting. Do you have any similar experiences or feelings that, like me, when it comes to it? It would be interesting to hear in the comments, or at least interesting to read in the comments rather. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.